Right, so let's get on to the first slide. I've given you here 9 such images, and I'd like you just to spend a moment or two looking through these images, not with me, but I'm going to invite you, please, just to type into the chat feed uh, if any words about chemistry come to mind, inspired for you by these images. So I'm not going to spend ages on this. If nobody types in, then that's just fine. And I'll just say that we will see this slide or something very similar at the end of the presentation as well in about 40 minutes time. So colleagues, I can't see the chat feed when I'm in screen share mode, but if we just give this 30 seconds or so and see if anybody types in. If it's a no, don't worry. I've got a slide that will help us on the next of the presentation.
Nothing at the moment.
Okay, well, it's early days on student interaction here, but do please be willing to do this. This isn't a test, and I think I'm right in saying that if you type in and that it's not actually going to be attributed back to you as an individual, so there's no confidentiality issues here. Well, I've picked 3 of the images, and I've also picked 3 descriptions of chemistry, which I think are pretty widely used. Different syllabuses and different styles of study treat it differently, but I think most of us know that organic chemistry and inorganic chemistry and physical chemistry are different ways that people categorize aspects of this very large subject of chemistry. And so of those 9 images, for me, this reaction flask with its molecules on it is speaking organic chemistry. Yes, the catalyst could be a metal, and that will be inorganic chemistry, but that was my take on this. Nobody typed it in, but that's fine. This is where I came from. I should imagine, although I've nicked an image here from the internet that's slanted at an unusual angle, I should imagine that most people recognize the periodic table and associate that with inorganic chemistry. We didn't get any comments about radioactive elements and the ethics of radiochemistry, but those are aspects of chemistry just the same. And maybe people didn't recognize this image, but this is a picture of a laser table. You can see this false purple light here. Laser tables are large metal platforms with, it's like grown-up Lego, really. You can lock in mirrors and waveguides and all sorts of things and use a laser to pass the light through an experiment. So those were my 3 pictures and my 3 sets of words: organic, inorganic, and physical. But if you look at the university research pages on the line, or in most universities actually will have some kind of category like this, you'll find that my institution and my school of study, the School of Chemistry at UEA, we actually present chemistry at the research level in a fundamentally different way. You can see the titles here: chemistry of materials and catalysis, chemistry of light and energy, and chemistry of life processes. I think you'll agree that those sound like important subjects. Life processes, energy is very important, catalysis is valuable. And if you were to go into these web pages, and why not do so after the presentation, after the session, why don't you have a look? And you'll see that we have a whole set of different wordings in our own research pages, where we're presenting what, as individual academic staff members, excites us about chemistry, drives us forward in our research groups to study chemistry and advanced chemistry. I don't need to read you through the whole list. Many of these descriptions are words that are familiar to you. Perhaps supramolecular chemistry, less so. This is beyond the scale of molecules, but still at the molecular scale. And so there is a huge range of different possible descriptions for chemistry. Oh, potentially confusing then, is it? Well, I think that you'll find that it need not be. My point is that chemistry is a very broad subject. And in that great wealth of different topics, you will find, all of you, things which excite you and interest you. Now, in the UK, our professional body is the Royal Society of Chemistry. And over a number of years, the Royal Society of Chemistry, previous to the pandemic, ran a series of international symposia. That's scientists from universities and industry and government labs coming together For example, if your love of life was inorganic chemistry, then 4 or 5 years ago in Manchester, people from all around the world gathered for an international symposium in advancing the chemical science of inorganic chemistry. The year before, for organic chemistry, oh, we could have an excuse to go to America and have that meeting. Or physical chemistry linked in with nanoscience, or more generally, all sorts of different descriptions, inorganic and materials, chemical renewable energy. So the Royal Society of Chemistry picked another set of descriptions. But within these descriptions, or any other set of descriptions that you want to assemble for yourself, make a list of aspects of chemistry. You will find that recognizable parts of chemistry fit within them. And there is going to be organic chemistry within chemical biology and in supramolecular chemistry, and inorganic chemistry in materials. And of course, physical chemistry to renewable energy and nanoscience. I'm not going to take you through the rest of these slides one by one, but all the descriptions match up with different areas of chemistry. It's a huge and continuous subject and very varied, which brings us to my main point in this part of the session. What is it then that chemists actually do if the subject is so wide? And so what about this situation here? Just prepare you, we're going to have a poll on the next slide, but I'm also a member of the American Chemical Society, as well as being a fellow of the Royal Society of Chemistry. And a few years ago, the American Chemical Society ran a poster campaign across the campuses of the USA. It's a huge academic system. And the point that they were making was that not all chemists wear white coats. The stereotype of the student or the crazy professor in the laboratory in their white coats, not the typical career path for many chemists. So let's have a look at this poll. I'll switch to the slide on the presentation, and then I think we're going to run the poll through the Zoom. Yeah, here we go. So that image, which of these descriptions do you think is the one that brings you to mind about what this young woman is doing? Is she scuba diving? Is she riding a motorbike? She is holding a helmet. Perhaps she's going skiing. It looks pretty icy there. Or studying the ozone layer. What's your best guess? Wow, we've got a huge take for studying the ozone layer. I don't have a display here that shows me how many answers that was, but it's certainly a good answer. Let's close that panel. Can I close it, or do you close it at your end? I can close it and just go and just move on from there.
Richard, it was 100% of people thought she was studying the ozone layer.
Yes, but 100% of how many answers? If it was just one answer, then that's
9 answers.
9 answers. Well, that's brilliant. 9 out of possibly hundreds of people registered, but all 9 went for the ozone layer. And indeed, that is one of the things she could be doing. She could be drilling down, not actually at this moment, but her job at that time in Antarctica could have been drilling down into the ice to find about the history of global pollution. Or she could be equipped at a research lab with spectroscopy to study the ozone layer or many other things. That's great. Well, thank you for responding. Let's see if we can get more clicks, more votes with the next one. Here's another poster from the American Chemical Society. Can we run the poll on this one, please?
Richard, whilst this poll is running, we've had a question come through to ask what are the typical salaries of a chemist?
Oh, goodness. Well, that's a very good question. And the Royal Society of Chemistry, which I mentioned before, does run a remuneration survey. So there is stats on this. I'm afraid I don't have that answer off the top of my head. I don't want to guess it, but a lot depends on whether one enters a major international company or something smaller. and we're going to talk about career paths later on. So I'm afraid I'm going to duck out of that question now. Perhaps I can follow up afterwards with some with the link to the Royal Society of Chemistry.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Okay, we've got a spread of people here. Walking to the South Pole, where some of our respondents have a sense of humor. I'm pleased to see that. Clearly she is scuba diving. But yes, the point about the slide, and we can close this again now. The point about the slide was that she, in fact, is researching natural products, diving off the reef somewhere. This is probably an American reef, but in my youth, I researched in Australia, and people were diving from James Cook University off the Great Barrier Reef and bringing back the corals under license and extracting them to find out what natural products were there. And there is a huge diversity of natural products, and some of these find their way to be important in medicine. So it is one, not the only way, in which people can discover new drug molecules. Let's go back to the UK and the Royal Society of Chemistry. And this will bring us a bit more towards this aspect of do chemists get paid well? And you'll see what I'm getting at in a moment. The Royal Society of Chemistry, a few years ago, but many of these people are still active, and it gives us information about them, and they're in the public domain because the Royal Society celebrated them as a practicing scientist, 100 practicing scientists, of which quite a lot were chemists. So I've listed out some of the categories that the Royal Society of Chemistry used. And let's start with the first category on the list. The Royal Society of Chemistry identified a number of scientists, some academic. Lee Cronin here, who's still at Glasgow University. Lee Cronin is an academic scientist. And they felt that his type of life passion, his career, his research group's activity, he calls it on his website complex chemical systems, which doesn't give much away to a lay audience. But he's an explorer in the terms of reference of the Royal Society of Chemistry, at least for this purpose. And from his website, I've got a picture from his lab here. It's a fairly typical research lab. It may look familiar to you, perhaps a little bit more cluttered, or perhaps a little bit different to some of the equipment in school labs, but recognizable environment. And if you focus in on his logo here, his research group logo. By the way, team at the college, can you actually see my mouse pointer?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
That's super. It's useful to know. Anybody recognize what this white image is in this research group logo? What does it recognize? What does it look like? Well, I'm not going to give long on this, but it might come in through the chat. We'll just give a moment or two for people to type.
We've had an answer. They're asking if they're gears.
Excellent. Well, we have to ask Lee Cronin that answer, of course. I expect you'll get 100 emails now immediately asking him about this. But that's what I take them to be. Yes, they are gears. And what Cronin's group were doing were developing molecular machines, so that they're not literally making gear wheels, but they're developing molecular machines, inventing structures, functional structures, which never existed before, and making them and proving that they function. So this is exploring in the sense that it's a new environment that they're going into. Let's move on to Alan First, who's had a long career at Cambridge. He was categorized not as an explorer, but as an investigator. Perhaps that's a subtle difference. But First has been spending his career with his research group, hundreds of research students over many years, studying proteins. So most of us will recognize on the left-hand side of the screen an image of a folded protein, a three-dimensional object, which is one of the major polymers within nature. First is studying how this object folds up. It's coded and made by reading the genome, but then it assembles into a functional object. It is a molecular machine, but First isn't inventing molecular machines. He's trying to find out how nature builds them. So in that sense, Royal Society of Chemistry put him as an investigator. What about this third category? Developer, translator. Well, Carol was one of the people featured in this event, and her life pattern is not in the laboratory. I'm sure she has plenty of office work and works from home perhaps now, but a lot of her activity was participating in huge scientific meetings. She was a communicator of science, a translator of science, a developer of networks, taking information from academic labs and taking it out into the community, particularly into commerce and industry. In the UK, we call this process a knowledge transfer network. And we have an organization, Chemistry Innovation, that does this, and many people have their careers there. And in different countries across the world, including the developing world, we'll find that government-aided organizations have this type of role, taking information from academic research out into the community, into commerce, and making it advance the science and the commercial base of that nation or the whole world. Well, I've skipped on down to Simon Campbell now. We could have to talk about the others in the discussion afterwards, some questions. This is a category business and marketing. And Simon Campbell had a very typical career. He's retired now, but he started with a BSc in chemistry, and he worked his way through a major company. Pfizer is a major American pharmaceutical company. It has research labs, smaller now than previously, but a research entity in the UK. And he had a wonderful career and went through the ranks and became the director of head of research in Pfizer, a major international multinational organization. Okay, so that was his life path. That's where chemistry took him. Let's compare that with Chris Evans's pattern. Now, he was categorized as an entrepreneur, a creator of businesses, whereas Campbell was a very successful scientist in an existing business. So what's this distinction? Well, Chris Evans, he started a company called Chiroscience. And in actual fact, Chiroscience was very successful. It merged with another large company called Celtec, and eventually merged into UCB, which is a Belgian pharmaceutical company. Its website claims it created one of Europe's flagship bioscience enterprises. So Chris Evans's career took him from tiny startup companies which became large and then became valuable. It's not all about money. James Gallagher was featured in this 100 Scientists as well as a communicator, bringing science to the nation and also to young nations, perhaps a little bit as we might be doing if this wasn't a pandemic year and everything done through the internet. And I'm sure you have many inspirational teachers, excuse me, that have this role. So we're going back to the polls again. What about these 5 jobs out of that list? Lee Cronin, the molecular machines guru. Alan Furst, investigating biology. Claire Spooner, Carol, the industrial, sorry, I'm stumbling over that one. Carol, working for the network transfer agencies. Simon Campbell, working as a director of research in a major international company. Or Chris Evans, building such a company. Which of these jobs look to you folks out there? And there is no right answer to this, but it'll be interesting to see what we get. Which of you folks, which of these folks do you think have had the most interesting careers? Whose jobs look the most interesting? Well, there's a good spread here. People like the inventor of molecules, molecular architect. They like the explorer, and they fancy a career in the pharmaceutical industry. Why not? As I say, there's no right answer. Let's go on to the next slide. I'll just click again. That didn't change. Yeah. Well, I've had a question put to me about money, but this slide is about that. Which of these jobs look to you to be the best paid? So we had we got the answer. That's brilliant. Okay, and of course it does depend what people mean by paid. Uh, well, I'm not sure about the answers. I haven't emailed these people and asked them what they're paid, but I think that the winner here in the poll would also be my personal winner in terms of salary. Yes, if you're the head of research at a major pharmaceutical company, you are going to be pretty well paid at that stage in your career. Uh, Academics, professors, successful professors in Cambridge or in Glasgow, they're going to be reasonably well paid as well. So people were asking me about about salaries. Many academic professors go beyond the top of the standard scale, which is about £65,000 a year for professors, which is the top grade in the university system, and they go substantially beyond that. Beyond £100,000 a year, they have to have their remuneration published by universities because of we're spending public money on these salaries. So you can find out what the really well-paid academics are getting paid, but I would hazard a guess that none of them are paid as much as a director of research in a major pharmaceutical company. But what about Chris Evans? He started a company and it became a multi-million pound and a multinational company. It was bought or merged into other companies. Uh, I would hazard a guess that in terms of creating wealth, he made quite a substantial amount of personal money, as well as having a really interesting and exciting time doing that. That's just my opinion, of course, but entrepreneurs that start companies and then sell them, they sell out and make a significant amount of money. So you can make money out of chemistry if that was the motivation. And what about this one? We won't spend so long on this poll. I'm conscious of the time, but which of these jobs look to you to be the most difficult? Now we've got the poll up in front of us. Do we remember the jobs now? We had academics inventing new molecular machines, academics studying how nature works, communicators of academic knowledge into industry, uh, running pharmaceutical companies and their research, or building companies from scratch. Which is the most difficult? Broad spread of answers here. Well, it's not for me to judge, but I think that studying protein folding is going to have been a hugely difficult task. And as a matter of fact, I think audience out there, I'm assuming many of you are young people, I think in your lifetime you will see a Nobel Prize in the area of protein folding. But yes, it's a good spread. The point about that spread, by the way, is that is what do we mean by most difficult? I was told through a chat feed giving this lecture recently at a college that this was a subjective question, and indeed it is. It's deliberately subjective. Do you mean difficult for them, or do you mean difficult for you? But evaluating that type of thing in your own vision of what chemistry is for you will help you identify which of these career paths or ones like it might be things that you would be led on to through studying chemistry if that's where you end up. Okay, let's just look at one more of these. Again, we can open the poll on this one. What about these jobs from the point of view of how society views them? Which is the most valued by society? Just while that poll is running, I'm not necessarily saying that people should choose a job because it's valued by society, nor am I saying that people should choose a job because it's going to make them rich or they'll be well paid. But these are decisions that people find themselves making as they go through education into life and have careers. Well, we won't judge on this one, but this particular poll has given Carol here, who hasn't figured largely in the polling so far. He tied second place billing, and we think that society values the medicinal chemistry industry, the pharmaceutical industry. That's undoubtedly true. And in this pandemic year, it's perhaps been brought into the focus, not just vaccines, but also medicines, treatments against the disease itself. So these are things that I've just been asking you to think about as we go through. So, what is important about the job we choose and why? I'm not sure. We have a poll set up for this, and I'm not going to leave it very long this time because we pretty much covered this. This section where we've been running these polls has, can we close the poll, please? This section where we've been running the polls has been, well, that's a fortunate end, has been very much to help you to engage with what it is that you recognize in these different career paths. Um, well, I shut the poll early, but we had 100% score for interesting, and I think that's is an important factor. If you turn it around, do you want to spend your whole life doing something that you really find boring and uninteresting? Well, possibly if it's very well paid, that is indeed the decision many people make. But there are very many different topics about why we choose our path. And one of those paths might be to study chemistry. Does this have a poll preset? Yeah, we won't spend on this one either, but these aspects that we've been talking about, they relate to the process of studying chemistry as well. So let's just take a quick snapshot at the early responses on this as well. Close the poll, please. Interesting. Well, I'm happy with that answer, and we will see where it leads people in later life. Okay, now let's just so what about why study chemistry as a topic? Well, I'm not going to spend a long time talking on this. This is about a 40-minute time slot. I want to leave plenty of time for questions, and we're about 30 minutes into it. But here are some pretty pictures from the internet. I'm very much grateful for this. Some of these images do have tags in them. I want to capture the sun's energy even better than nature does. Please notice, this is an aspirational statement, even better. Now, I think most people in STEM-tastic will recognize this green leaf. I think most people will recognize that that green leaves capture the energy and that plants use them in order to harvest the energy from sunlight. And many people will know that as well as protein folding, there are some wonderful protein assemblies which are part of the capturing of light coming in, and these so-called photosystems are amazingly sophisticated assemblies in order to turn the light into a usable form of energy. Wonderful. Can we really do better than nature? Well, I'm going to suggest to you that the next generation of scientists coming through, and it's already starting out there across the world in university labs, the next generation of scientists will achieve that. Because nature has done this by evolution. It's got to a wonderful system. And the investigator approach, studying how these photosystems works, has been really important in terms of setting the scene for how to go about this. We can learn from nature. But evolution got to a wonderful machine that worked well enough to be successful. And in this particular area, other machines have not evolved. In bacteria, yes, there's a greater variety, but in the leaves of plants, it's effectively the same thing. So evolution is fine when you get to something functional, but then it stops advancing. But in chemistry, if we use our imagination and create new things, we can, in chemistry, get beyond that. We can go on optimizing until we are really spectacularly good at something. Or maybe another reason to want to study chemistry is that we'd like to understand how life came onto this planet in the first place. And you can do that in laboratory chemistry by making conditions in the lab which are resembling ancient conditions on the planet, or indeed you can do it by spectroscopy within astronomy. In principle, we look back in time when we look at the light coming from objects in the night sky hundreds of billions of light years away. Or maybe we'd like a really nice place to work. I think most people would agree this looks like a pretty glossy research environment. It's got the breakout board here where people are chatting about their science and free networking. In the age when these labs look like this, nobody's wearing face masks in this image yet. And we'll get back to that fairly soon. Or maybe we'd like to develop a new medicine. Now, I touched on this earlier in the show. We were looking at the role of natural product research in developing medicines. It's not the only way, but a large number of medicines come from natural products or originate from natural products and are developed into functional medicines. And the oceans of the planet are one of the places where we find a lot of such things, as well as, of course, the rainforests and other diverse environments. Or perhaps you just love doing it. This isn't a picture of me, but it could have been if you want to think of it in that way. Or maybe you just fancy wearing the T-shirt. After all, some chemists might regard themselves as cute, or chemists do have a sense of humor. And of course, folks out there in STEMtastic, chemistry is cool. Or maybe we just want to study chemistry because we're excited by life's journeys. And I think if we were to run back the clock or dial a neighbor now, if we were to Google and talk to one of the people I featured from the Royal Society of Chemistry study, featured out of many, I just chose them to give a diverse set of career paths. I think if we were to ask them, they would tell us that they did not know where chemistry was going to take them when they started out. Where do you start out? Well, I suppose as a young person at primary school, but gradually through a higher secondary school and colleges such as the West Suffolk College and higher education or further education, degrees and graduate trainings programs, internships, all these things. It's a journey, and none of these people knew where it was going to take them. I have to say, I've chosen really successful people. Each of them discovered that they were gifted in their particular field, and their careers have been superstar careers. But for all of us, there's an exciting journey here, and we don't know where it's going to take us when we set out. Maybe not much longer in the petrochemical industry, but as we switch from oil-based chemicals as feedstocks for manufacturing, plant-based substitutes will still need large-scale manufacturing and fractioning towers to bring them through into the marketplace. Or many chemists do work in laboratory environments. There is a hand-on craft skill to some types of chemistry manipulation that happens in laboratory fume cupboards. Or we can sit cool while the machine does it for us and keep an eye on it. Or we may find ourselves working in a very much different environment. This is a large-scale, production-scale facility. This is hard hat territory. Not all chemists wear white coats, and not all chemists wear the helmets that you need for skidoo in Antarctica. So there's a great variety of working environments. Well, I'm almost through. We will have time for questions at the end through the chat. So if you're thinking about that, then do please join in and ask questions. But I put back 9 images here. My last question for you, and it doesn't matter if people don't know the answer, but there is a right answer to this question. How many of these images are different to the slide I showed you at the start of the session? So let's play the game. Let's leave this just for a reasonable length of time to get a reasonable number of answers, and then we'll move on, and organizers will move to the question session. I don't know, Claire, if you want to introduce that or if we just feed seamlessly into it, but let's just encourage people one last chance to take part in a STEMtastic poll. Well, let's see what the answer really is. So thank you for taking part in the polls on the way through here, and for staying in the session. Those of you that are, excuse me, those of you that are hearing me, sorry, those of you that are hearing me say thank you will have stayed in the session. How many of these panels are different? Let's find out. Well done. It was 2 panels that had changed. That brings me to the end of my session. It's just about on the 40-minute point, I think. I hope that's okay within the time window for STEMtastic. I'll have a sip of coffee from my promotional University of East Anglia mug. And Claire, and Maddie, let's hand over to the question session.
Brilliant lecture, thank you so much. I do have a few questions that have come through for you. The first one is, how can I get started as a chemist, and what would you say are the best things to study, and are there specific progression routes? They say they're 15, so they're year 10, maybe year 11.
Well, the typical way into chemistry is through an A-level syllabus, and most chemistry degrees are looking for people that have A-level chemistry combined with other sciences. But I just want to say that's not essential, and it's becoming increasingly less the universal norm. So you can choose subjects at school which are a spread of subjects that interest you, but include chemistry within that, so that you have the A-level entry route into chemistry. There is another entry route, and that is that many universities, and my university, University of East Anglia in Norwich, we do also run a foundation year entry. And this means that instead of starting a degree program, and I'll just say a word, if I may, organizers, about the two different types of degree programs in answer to this question. But instead of starting the degree program straight off, young people come and study at what in the international system is called level 3. A degree program starts at level 4. So they spend a year at university on an entry route. And many people will do this because they've chosen a spread of subjects which does not directly prepare them for a chemistry degree. And indeed, it's an alternative to the chemistry A-level route. And what about the study onwards? Well, most universities are offering Master of Chemistry programs, which are a 4-year degree. That's level 4 through to level 7, if you want to count it up on your fingers. And that is regarded as the premium degree program within our professional subject for entry into research. It's not the only path, I want to make that clear as well. But the MChem programs have a longer research project in the final year. And that research project is not necessarily what you then will research in your lifetime or career, far from it. But it's the skill set that gets you the opportunity to sell yourself in job applications and interview. And so there is no getting away from it. For people that are using practical chemistry as a launch point into any of the careers that you saw there, then you need to take into account that the research project experience in the research groups of the university that you join is going to be a significant factor. And there's nothing wrong with the Bachelor of Chemistry, Bachelor of Science, BSc degree route. I'm certainly going to say that's important as well. And for some people, it's better. They can follow on with a vocational master's program, or perhaps they're interested in becoming teachers or something like this and follow it up by a teacher training qualification. So there is no right choice here. It's horses for courses. At UEA, we run both types of degrees like that, and we do that, and we have a fluid boundary between the two. So people can enter on the MChem stream and switch during the first year to BSc, or indeed many people enter at the BSc stream where the entry requirements are lower, excel at university and decide they're going to do MChem. So there is a fluid boundary between those two. And beyond there, well, many people do study for PhDs, those research academics that I featured here, and the research academics at UEA that I showed on the first slide, and myself, we all run research groups, and we have PhD students, doctoral students, as part of those research groups. So the entry path beyond, many people will get jobs straight from their MChem or BSc degree, but many also will stay on and do a PhD at a university, end up with a Doctor of Philosophy degree, and then enter their careers at that stage. Or some will continue and do what we call postdoctoral research, a paid but temporary job in university labs, and then go out to whatever career path they take. I hope that answers the question. If there's a follow-up, then I'm happy to respond further.
That's brilliant, thank you. I have another question. They've asked, how important is artificial intelligence in using computers when creating new medicines and solving problems in chemistry?
Well, that's a very good question indeed, and a very topical one. And there's a difference between artificial intelligence and using computers, which I imagine the question knows, but let's just be clear about this. If you go into any research lab nowadays, you're going to find that every piece of equipment, other than the very simplest ones, are interfaced with computers. So spectrometers are run through computers. The literature searching we do to explore what's in the journals is run through computer systems. So being savvy with computers, which I think is second nature to most young people, is a really important part of that. Artificial intelligence goes beyond that. And this is an area where there is a tremendous interplay because it's machine learning. We are trying to develop, computer scientists are trying to develop machines, computational machines, which find their own knowledge sets. And that is going to make a huge difference because I've taken some of the slides out of this session. I sometimes go on and talk about the diversity of molecular molecules. One of those slides shows that if we made, as organic chemists, all the possible molecules up to 100 carbon atoms, we would need more material than the entire mass of the universe. This tells us something besides the knowledge that the universe is very large, so chemistry must be huge. We have to be very selective about what we make. And machine learning, artificial intelligence, is indeed going to be one of the ways in which we can home in quicker on truly valuable molecules, personal molecules to fit the genetic requirements of individuals, so-called personal medicine. It's on the horizon, and in your generation, if you're young people out there in the audience, in your career path, you're going to see these things move on and become commonplace in the same way in which my generation has seen mobile phones and the internet become commonplace.
Thank you very much. That's all of our questions for this morning. So I'd just like to say thank you very much to Richard Stevenson for giving up his time this morning to come and talk to us here at STEMtastic. We hope it's been informative, and we hope you all have a great day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.